Join me for my most exciting and dangerous adventure yet. Ride through Canada. Hello everyone! Today's shout out goes to Flickers, who is a top tier channel member. Thank you ever so much, Flickers. So Kweesy and I decided that this Christmas we wanted to book a holiday in Canada since most of our friends were out of town for the holidays too. I've never been skiing or snowboarding or actually taken a proper snow holiday before, so I was quite excited. Have you guys ever had a winter holiday? And if you did, what did you do on it? We picked this lovely secluded Christmas village that also offered cabin stay and horse riding. Don't worry, we did hire a ranch hand to check up on our horses, turn them out in the day, feed them on a schedule, etc. It was pretty cold at McFarlane's now, so much so that there was even snow on the ground, so we had to make sure the horses would be as safe and comfortable as possible while we were gone. Before we knew it, December was upon us and it was time to jump on our flight that definitely didn't get delayed because of the snow. We arrived and oh my goodness, the place was just gorgeous. It was a pretty old looking village, but it was all decorated up for Christmas. And of course, the first few days we just did these wonderful snow walks, ice skating, which I wasn't particularly good at, parties, and lots and lots and lots of food. And then disaster struck. The day before we were due to go on a duo mountain ride, Kweesy got really sick. It was some sort of bad flu. She was not having a good time. But in true Kweesy fashion, she made me not cancel the ride and instead asked me to do a solo ride instead. The people at the riding place were super understanding and helpful. They changed my booking the day before and switched me just to a solo ride. I was up at about 6 and boy was it cold! I do not envy people who have to get up in this sort of cold every single day. Kweesy was sleeping peacefully. Well, as peacefully as you can with a blocked nose and sore throat. The crisp air was certainly refreshing. As soon as I saw the horse tied at the hitching post, I immediately recognized Alex. If you don't know, I tried him back when I was thinking about buying another horse. He must have ended up being sold here instead. Small world, I suppose. I spoke to the instructor and he gave me all the gear I needed and said that if I got lost, confused, or even a little bit scared, all I had to do was radio in for help. Alex was also geared up with a saddlebag full of emergency supplies. I'm not going to lie, I was pretty nervous that I could potentially get lost, but they assured me that Alex would take care of me as best he could. I already knew how steady his feet were, so that did make me feel a little bit better. Even though I knew Alex was completely broke and sound, I always like to give pats and cuddles so the horse gets to know me a little bit before I jump on. And so, filled with nervous energy and excitement, I set off into the snowy wonderland. I could not help myself with that winter montage. That was wonderful. Anyway, the first part of my ride didn't go quite as smoothly as I made that montage seem. There were a couple of tricky spots, specifically when we were going along the path, and pretty slowly it began to kind of funnel into a very, very, very narrow path with a pretty steep drop right next to it. I was really concerned that I had already gone the wrong way, but as we kept going, I trusted Alex, was paying a lot of attention to where I was steering him and what we were doing. We did get past this. Now this then happened again. There was another section where the path was super, super thin. This really concerned me because it was literally just frozen water between me and falling to quite a distance, but we did manage to get through it after that. I will admit I was rushing a little bit because the sun had already begun to rise and I really wanted to see it from the top of the mountain because I thought that that would be really pretty, and spoiler alert, it was, but it did mean that I was rushing some of the sections. Now we were completely fine up until we were going up our first serious incline. It was up the side of a mountain, and for some reason my brain was so enamored with the wonder around me that I ended up not paying attention and sort of daydreaming a little bit, and when I snapped out of it I realized that I had pulled Alex too far up the right and we were kind of going along where the steep part of the mountain was, and this caused him to end up sliding a little bit down the hill. It wasn't too major, he was totally fine. I know that, I checked him afterwards, but it was enough to kind of wake me up and realize that I should be paying 100% attention to where I'm going, what I'm doing, and the area around me. And then I actually took the correct path up the really steep mountain. Now this view was 100% worth almost sliding down the side of a mountain. I had just caught the sunrise sort of at its peak and it was absolutely gorgeous. I took a proper rest here. I didn't feel too much of the rest, but I wanted Alex to have a bit of a breather because there was a lot of mountaineering that we'd be doing over this ride, so I wanted to make sure that we were both fully energized, and this was a wonderful spot to kind of take a moment to appreciate where we were, what we were doing, and kind of reflect, well at least I was reflecting, I can't say for Alex, but reflect on how far we've come, especially this year. Before I continue on, I just want to say I don't know if I'll make it back in time to do a New Year's special. I'll try my best. It might be a shorter special, but if I don't end up doing a New Year's special, I still want to say a big thank you for supporting me on my journey along on this last year. I hope that this year has treated you well, and if it hasn't, I hope that the next year will treat you much more kindly. Now after our break, instead of going back down the mountain, we sort of went along it to this relatively flat sort of plateau area. Now because of the fact that we just took a long break where we weren't doing much, I now need to make sure that both me and Alex's body temperature are high enough so that we don't risk anything out here in the wilderness. I also want him nice and limber because we are going to be doing a lot of climbing. Alex is honestly such an angel. This transition here was so incredibly smooth. One thing I did notice though is horses in the snow when they're cantering, because they don't want to be dragging their feet through the snow and increasing their resistance, they sort of do like bunny hops through the snow, and it's kind of strange to sit in when you first start going, but once you find the rhythm, it is honestly the cutest thing to watch from the helmet cam, because they do little bouncy bounces along and it's just adorable. Here I spotted that it was sort of flat and I could take him around to make sure that he had enough time to properly warm up and properly gather a rhythm. I was fully aware that this possibly could be the only time that we could steadily canter without risking anything, so I thought this was a great opportunity to make sure that his warm-up was complete. There was also that deer that didn't run, but I thought it would. Maybe it's used to seeing people, I don't know. But as we came around again, I spotted the path that we were supposed to be going through to get to another peak, another mountain peak. This was where things started to get a little bit interesting again, but all I know that it was that I was thankful for the opportunity to get this absolutely adorable canter going. This is where things got a little bit hairy. Again, I had just gotten a tiny bit lost. I had to sort of loop back on myself to get to this point, and I very quickly realized that there was no other way down. I couldn't go up, I couldn't go sideways. It was just this straight down. It doesn't really show up on camera too much how steep it was. I thought Alex could keep his footing. I was wrong. We ended up sliding on his bum the entire way down. This was a little bit nerve-wracking at the time. I pushed him into more of a trot to make sure that he was okay and that he wasn't lame or limping or anything like that. He was fine, but it definitely had my heart racing for a moment. Now I'm a little frustrated at this bit because my GoPro ran out of battery because I forgot that in the cold batteries run down quicker, which is very annoying. So if you notice a change in the weather, there is actually a bit of a time chunk missing. Not too much happened in it, so I'm not too upset, but that is why if you notice a change. This next section caught me completely off guard. I didn't realize that I was lost. I was not in the place I was supposed to be. I should have been down the way a little bit, which is why I'm looking for a way down, because this is clearly a ledge and I can't get down from here. Now this completely isn't Alex's fault. This was mine for being in the wrong place, and he actually saves me, if anything, in this situation. So yeah, I just had the biggest heart attack of my life. We were so lucky that he landed the jump. I didn't think that he would. And I'm very, very glad that he did. I know there is snow, so at the end of the day, I probably would have been okay. Alex would have been more at risk of injuring himself because of how heavy he is. But there was snow to cushion our landing, but he did land on his feet. I had to hitch Alex and then just sit down for a second, just because I was so shaken up by the fall, the jump. I don't even know what that was, but I genuinely needed to take a minute to just recoup and calm down. After I had a breather and the shock was kind of gone from my system, I of course checked over Alex, made sure he was 100% okay, and thankfully he was. Then I went to go check out exactly what just happened. That indentation you can see in the snow, I don't know how clear it was in the video, but Alex ended up sort of spinning. I think he wasn't sure where to go next. He was still panicked, even though he handled the situation well. But that was basically the drop we just had. Looking back, I can see what happened was he slipped to the edge of the ledge, and then at that point he sort of made a decision to, because there was two options. He could either end up trying to fight against gravity and genuinely slip and completely lose his balance and then fall, or he could go with the gravity and take a jump down, which is what he ended up doing. And I think that genuinely saved us both in that situation, because had he lost his balance, he could have landed on top of me, he could have landed at a bad angle on his legs, I could have ended up broken, he could have ended up broken. So I'm very thankful for this absolute godsend of a horse right now. Now, I made a decision here that not a lot of people might agree with me on, but I decided to not report in to Canada riding. This was partly because I didn't want to bother them if they were busy, and both me and Alex were fine, so I didn't really see a point of reporting in. We were both okay, and I knew where I was going now because this actually set me back on track, which was the whole point, so I thought that it might have been okay to just continue on. The ride ahead was relatively smooth, and I'll use any opportunity I can to put in a montage, so here you go. Now this section of our ride was going to be our most challenging so far. We were going to be climbing an absolutely incredible peak, which you will see very soon. At this point, we were making our way through the very deepest parts of the mountain, or at least what felt like the very deepest parts. We were pretty much in isolation. There weren't any buildings nearby, there wasn't any civilization. Our winter village was literally hours away at this point, and it was just me, Alex, and whatever nature was showing me at the time. I couldn't help but feel this sense of incredible loneliness, but with that loneliness came peacefulness as well. I don't know if you guys have ever experienced it when you're out in nature, especially if there's snow, because the snow will absorb a lot of the sound. It can really make you feel quite tranquil. But at the same time, I sort of felt like a trespasser, like I wasn't quite meant to be here. And I get this feeling again later on, except it's a little bit more mysterious. Anyway, I saw this big flat bit of land here, and I couldn't help but imagine plopping a little cabin right here in the middle of nowhere and having a few horses. Now this was only a fantasy because if you don't know me, I hate the cold. I was suffering through this trip because it was always cold, but I couldn't help but admire the absolute beauty that was this isolated section. The helmet cam doesn't really do this section justice because it actually gets incredibly steep. This is a sort of a valley section between almost like a ring of mountains, and as you're going up it just keeps getting steeper, and it wasn't until I sort of neared one of the peaks that you can kind of get a sense of how steep it was suddenly getting. You can see the incline a little bit more here because as I go past you can see that my seat position is very forward. It's almost in 2-point because I'm trying to keep off of Alex's hindquarters to make sure that his weight is nice and forward. Now as we came out of the wooded section, it got quite bright. The camera lens thankfully didn't really pick up on how bright it was, but it was sort of hurting my eyes. They did recommend taking sunglasses, but I'm silly and I thought, why on earth would I need sunglasses in snow? Because for somebody that isn't acclimatized to snowy, cold climates, I thought that this was a bit of a weird thing to have on you, so I didn't bother. But I managed to get up the hill. I was really nervous though, because of how steep this was, that we were going to have another butt sliding incident. But we didn't, so that's great. I was focusing and making sure that I was picking the path correctly, and it wasn't until we sort of crested the hill that I got this sort of strange feeling come over me. I'll explain what I was thinking and feeling in a moment, but as I was riding up to the peak, which you can see directly in front of me, I heard a noise that I have never heard in my life, and it scared the living daylights out of me. Now, at the time, I'm not superstitious, but I genuinely felt like the mountain didn't want me there because I kept hearing this noise and I didn't know what it was. Now there is a logical explanation, as there is for everything, which I will get to, but in conjunction with the whole kind of isolation and being so far away from in quotations, my own kind and civilization, I felt almost like the mountain didn't want me there. Almost like I wasn't invited, so I wasn't supposed to be here. It was a very strange feeling, and there was lots of things kind of contributing to that. And then I almost fell to my death in a crevice. Thank goodness I noticed it before I sent Alex over it, but he's a smart pony. There's the noise again. But yeah, I got this general feeling of I'm somewhere where perhaps mankind is not supposed to be. Like I was disrupting the true wilderness, the Mother Nature, if you will. And then it began to snow. And at first the snow was quite light, and then very, very progressively it got more and more aggressive, which then reinforced the feeling of like, oh, I'm not supposed to be here. Like, whatever this mountain is, it doesn't want me here. And because of how high up we were inside the cloud pretty much, and it just destroyed my visibility. I couldn't see in front of me at all. So I decided before I go careening off the side of a cliff by accident, because I can't see, we were going to take a rest by the mountain, or at least the bottom of the mountain, where we would then climb up, hopefully when it became clear soon. Sure enough, it did clear pretty soon. You can still see the remnants of the clouds everywhere. Then my GoPro died and I had to put in a new battery when I got to the top, which is a little bit frustrating. But oh my goodness, I genuinely don't think I've ever been this high without being in a plane before. And the air was super thin, like genuinely it was quite hard to breathe because of how little oxygen there was. But I will say something, the view was completely worth every slip, every freak out moment, everything. I just took a moment to soak everything in. That moment at the peak was 100% worth everything that I had just been through, and I genuinely felt like I had worked for that view. I had worked to be there. So I have a few things to clear up. I'm on my way back to the Christmas village now. It was pretty easy getting back, but as I was riding, I realized that the noise I was hearing was actually the glacier. Now, there was a huge bit of ice that I could hear cracking and creaking, and that was what the deep thrumming noise was. It wasn't some mountain god wanting me off. So once I realized that, I felt pretty silly. And of course, the snowstorms happen sometimes. And another thing as well, I actually wasn't that far away from the winter village. I was maybe an hour of riding out-ish, maybe less than that. And again, it was a pretty straight shot back. So after all of that, I felt a bit silly. But you know what? I enjoyed the experience anyway. I felt like it was a big workout, definitely. I was super achy. I was ready to just sit by the fire and eat loads of food and do nothing for the next few days. But I'm really glad that Kweesy pushed me to not rebook, because had she been with me, I think it would have been a very different experience. And sometimes you just got to do things on your own and see how they plan out. So I'm super glad that I went. The ride back, luckily, was pretty uneventful. Both me and Alex were exhausted from the ride, and I was looking forward to relaxing by the fire and eating loads and loads of food. I definitely felt a little sad knowing this could possibly be the last time I saw Alex. He's genuinely such a great horse, and I hope whoever rides him next knows how truly lucky they are. And so concludes my winter ride. What did you guys think of it? And before we go, thank you to all of my members, and please consider becoming a supporter so I can keep making videos like this. Last of all, Merry Christmas and have a Happy New Year. I hope you guys enjoyed, stay positive, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye!